Welcome to Free Media. I'm Amber Duke.
And I'm Robby Soave. Well, CBS's Face the Nation host, Margaret Brennan, claimed that free speech is what enabled the Nazis to do the Holocaust, and she said that while pressing Marco Rubio about J.D. Vance's Munich speech.
Vance also faced criticism for engaging with Germany's far-right party, but his remarks were focused on the EU's crackdown on free speech, something that has drawn criticism from U.S. civil liberties groups. Let's watch what Brennan said.
Well, he was standing in a country where free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide. And he met with the head of a political party that has far-right views and some historic ties to extreme groups. The context of that was changing the tone of it. And you know that the censorship was specifically about the right.
No, I have to disagree with you. Free speech was not used to conduct a genocide. The genocide was conducted by an authoritarian Nazi regime that happened to also be genocidal because they hated Jews and they hated minorities and they hated those that they had a list of people they hated, but primarily the Jews. There was no free speech in Nazi Germany. There was none. There was also no opposition in Nazi Germany. They were a sole and only party that governed that country. So that's not an accurate reflection of history.
So I've actually started to hear this claim made by progressives a number of times. It's becoming another, well, I'm for free speech, just not hate speech, which is very, very misleading to say because hate speech is a component of free speech. There's not an approved definition of it as a different thing. Similarly, this claim that free speech is what caused the rise of the Nazis is very ahistorical. I guess a lot of progressives don't know this, but there were actually vast infringements on Nazi speech in the interwar period in Germany between World War I and World War II. Nazi newspapers were shut down constantly. Nazis were arrested for engaging in Nazi speech. You can argue about whether that was justified or effective. Obviously, it was not effective because the Nazis did take over and then implemented that exact same censorship regime on their enemies. I think I would argue that trying to crack down on speech in that way makes the speakers seem more almost alluring to the public. Like people start asking, well, why are you not afraid to openly debate them? Why can't we even hear what they're saying? That kind of thing. But you can't argue that there was free speech. They were aggressively censored by the German government. So that's just not, it's actually called the Weimar fallacy. There was censorship of Nazi speech. It's just not true what she said.
Yeah, exactly. Rubio said it best when he called it ahistorical because that's exactly what it was. And it's so desperate and reaching for her to even suggest that that was anywhere close to the truth. I mean, trying to give the idea that Americans are contributing to the rise of Nazism because they value the First Amendment is really what she's getting at. The First Amendment obviously has existed for the entire history of our country, and yet suddenly now, because Trump is in charge, it's going to lead to Nazism. It's fundamentally ridiculous. And she's having a bad go of it, by the way, because she had that other interview with J.D. Vance just a couple of weeks ago, which we talked about on this program, where he dropped the infamous one-liner, "I don't really care," Margaret, in reference, in reference to the immigration debate. So what's going to happen with her and her show? It's not the CBS like this.
It was a bad weekend for CBS. We talked about in the other segment about a similar, exact same topic, 60 Minutes, another CBS program, hanging out with the German police and prosecutors who are arresting people for harmless jokes, which goes to show you that the kind of thing J.D. Vance was talking about in Munich. Now, I don't agree with J.D. Vance on everything or on a great number of things. I'm not strongly invested or knowledgeable about which party in Germany is doing things I agree with and which is not. I know he was criticized for meeting with the AfD party, and some people say they're basically just rebranding the Nazis, and others say, well, they're a very conservative party, but they're not Nazi affiliated. I don't know. I haven't looked into it. Fine, but most of the remarks I heard from him were about Germany's being bad on free speech, and then then Marco Rubio is attacked over that by Margaret Brennan, and then on that same network, they are accompanying the German police as they arrest people for really, really benign speech. It makes me think, well, yeah, those were fair criticisms.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was a really excellent speech. I thought it was kind of courageous for him to do that to their faces, and long overdue. I mean, the sort of backlash that J.D. Vance received, not just from Margaret Brennan, but other sectors of the media, was how dare he criticize our allies on their territory. Well, a lot of those allies are incredibly reliant on the United States.
Yeah.
And
let's make them a little less reliant. How about that? Then they can do whatever they want.
Yeah, exactly. And that was another part of his speech, too, was they take all of this money from us and then implement these draconian policies that are antithetical to our ideals. Why are we giving them all of this money if there's no soft power that's actually coming from it, which has always been the liberal argument as to how foreign aid is used?
And then what principles are we even upholding? You know, we run into this with Ukraine and Russia. Russia is bad. I absolutely don't want Russia to gobble up more European territory. Russia is a geopolitical rival, but in the process of resisting Russia, if European countries like Ukraine, for instance, suspend elections, outlaw rival political parties, crack down on the free press, then it's like, what are these? You're saying this is how we have to defend, you know, enlightened, classically liberal European democracy, and we're resorting to all of these illiberal means to oppose them. I'm just not for that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Ukraine using some like Nazi-affiliated factions to help fight the war.
That's okay. That's
fine.
That's okay.
Those Nazis are fine.
Yeah, we'll have to see if the German prosecutors have an exception for that. Well, that's outside their jurisdiction.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, just to watch the reflexive disgust from the media for the idea that European countries are censoring or restricting speech in any way, and if they are, then it's good, right?
Right. I wish they had a reflexive disgust for the governments doing these things.
We watch so quickly the sort of classic meme of, well, it's not happening, to it is happening and it's good that it's happening. And it all unfolded within a couple of days because of this Munich speech.
And they just trust smart, in their view, smart technocratic liberal elites to do censorship and have it be fine. Again, if it's Vladimir Putin, if it's the Russian government doing it, then they'll criticize it rightly. I also think censorship when done by the Russian authoritarian leaders is bad, and Chinese authoritarianism is bad. But it's also bad when, our friends and allies in Europe do it to their own public and end up, and by the way, you know, these are global companies. These, as we talked about in the other segment, these are American tech companies that want to have more free speech kind of rules, paradigms on the platforms, and you know, I guess if they want to do it, to have different rules for Germany, fine, but they are not going to apply those rules to the rest of us, and that needs to be resisted utterly.
And these are the same people, by the way, that were crying before the election about how Trump was going to jail his political opponents, and Germany is literally jailing political opponents, and they're like, yay, go Germany.
For dick jokes.
Yeah.
It was literally a dick joke. More free media right after this.